joining us. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Bernard.
In the face of how controversial this matter is, what goaded you to do this survey within this short period, seeing as some of the processes in the Constitution require that even the hearings regarding the petition be done in camera? What was the motivation?
Bernard, we've been doing this kind of work as part of our good governance pledge for this country. And I remember before the IGP was removed, we didn't have a chance to do this survey because the timing was not right for us in terms of the plan. So when we went to the field, we realized that people were supporting the IGP in terms of the way he performed his job. But the sacking had already happened when we were polling. So slightly about 53% were supporting the dismissal. But we wanted the public to give us their view on this issue of CJ before the decision is taken. Just that, because sometimes when the president makes a decision, people tend to align with him, to agree with him. But we wanted to see whether they will have a different view earlier on before any decision was taken. So this is the reason why we went to the poll to do this survey, and also to keep the conversation in public discourse. So those who are making a decision will focus on the poll rather than for opinion.
So what questions did you ask the respondents?
We know this may be an issue for every person that we spoke to understand. So we laid what we call the preamble. And the preamble sought to provide a bit of information on what is happening. Now, so if you see the question we asked them, the first question was, there are currently 3 petitions from Ghanaians asking for the removal of Chief Justice, but no evidence of any propriety has been public yet. Please indicate your level of support for the removal of the Chief Justice. First of all, the process for that to remove her. So this is before they have become aware of any evidence against them. Now, when we spoke, asked them, then 52% of them said, yes, they support her removal, even though they've not seen any evidence. 20% said no, they don't support it, even though they haven't seen any evidence. 18% were neutral, and 10% did not have an opinion on.
I see. I noticed in the IGP case, you said that you didn't have the chance to ask the question before the decision was taken. But I do remember in that survey that you asked generally about what people thought of the IGP's performance during the election before you asked whether they supported the president's decision not to renew or president's decision to essentially sack him. So that it gave us a very balanced view of his performance versus what they thought. And in interpretation, you said the 2 questions must be taken together to understand the full context, that even though they think the IGP did a great job at the election, they still felt he should go because they believe the president has a right to sack him. Why didn't you ask about the CJ's performance in this survey and just went straight to the issue of sacking?
This is a very interesting question, Bernard. The work of the CJ is not very well known to the public. And the work that in terms of rulings and cases is not really very well known in the public domain. So if we should ask a performance, what are they going to be basing it on? It will be very controversial and probably be a bit disservice. But in the case of IGP, everybody knows what it was to keep security and peace.
Hello, Musa, are you there? Hello, Musa. Hello?
Yes, can you hear?
Yes, you went off. So you're saying that whilst the IGP's work is more public-facing, you did not think the CJ's work was more public-facing. I think somebody can debate you on this because, at least in the past year and a half, there have been very many high-profile cases in which the CJ herself has sat. We've had her sit live on television, adjudicate many matters, including the controversial parliamentary issues of MPs and their removal and the rest of it. So, I mean, whilst I can't force you to design your survey, I thought from a public policy perspective, a general opinion about her work could give us a sense of how to interpret what people say, because the IGP matter tells you that people may think somebody could have done a good job and still think that the president has the power to remove. That's number one. Number two, whilst the IGP you can consider to be a direct appointee of the president, the CJ is a bit different because she's a member of the government in terms of she's the number 4 in that line. So I felt like maybe some opinion on her work could have been useful. Be that as it may, you reserve the right to design your questionnaire the way you want to. And I'm hoping that going forward, you may consider some of these suggestions.
I agree with you, Bernard, with hindsight.
But to the extent that people have not seen the content of the petition, do you think it's a fair question to ask the public to just opine on whether they think the CJ should go or not? If, for example, the allegations had been made public and the public reasonably understood what they meant, then you could ask their view. But the fact that somebody has raised allegations about the CJ's tenure, and the Constitution says that the hearings should not be made public, and then you ask people, do you support the process? I think it's a bit odd, right? On what basis would on what basis would they tell you that yes or no, and how should you interpret that result? Because it's not as if they have the details of what she's alleged to have done to have an informed opinion.
Bernard, first and foremost, we didn't end with that particular question. We went further for a reason. But before I go to the next question, I think you and I agree that if people form opinion about somebody, when you ask them without any evidence, that perception or opinion may have been formed by other information they may be privy to, publicly or privately. And it may also stem from the fact that recent polls have shown that judiciary really is not in the public good books in terms of perceived corruption. Indeed, in 2003, we did a survey that showed that the Supreme Court is the least trusted judiciary arm of this of our government. So some of these opinions may have been shaped by these perceptions people have held. Be it that it may, if you look at the question we asked them subsequently, we asked them that if evidence is adduced that the CJ has breached the law, please indicate your level of support for this process. We wanted to see people who may change their minds or stick to where they were, having received further and better particulars. And indeed, when you look at that response, you will notice that for those who say they did not have an opinion, or they were neutral, or they opposed to it, we asked them the second question and see whether they would shift their position. When we did ask them the second, what happened there? 30% of those people who were on the have no opinion or oppose the move, now support the removal process. But 35% still oppose it. 19% were still on the fence. And then 16% didn't have an opinion. It gives you an idea as to whether people have taken an entrenched position before they have known any evidence, and whether evidence accused will let people who are objective take their position.
That's a very interesting point to make. And in addition to that, your poll also showed that 79% of voters who supported John Dramani Mahama generally support the move, whilst for those who supported Bawumia, 70% of a move. That clearly shows us that the responses were political in terms of their party leanings determine whether they support this or not. So at least the value, in addition to whatever you said, is that people are perceiving this from political lenses, and that helps the process. But to the extent that the process is not over, and we report that more than half of Ghanaians support a removal, some could say that can prejudice the process, because it then means that even if I'm a committee member and I'm told that 52% of Ghanaians think she should go, even before I listen to the evidence, that weight of public opinion can affect my judgment, could it not?
Bernard, that is why it is a legal process. You know, in law, public opinion should not matter. And if those who are tasked with this follow public opinion, then they are doing disservice to this country. And indeed, if you look at the jury service, when juries are assembled for a trial, they are not to ignore any public perception or any public news and focus on the evidence. And we expect them to behave like that. Public opinion is public. It should not inform the judicial process.
Fair enough. And of course, because you come on air to explain, those who care to follow the details would see the nuance. But the tragedy of our work is we go with big headlines. So once you say 52% of Ghanaians support a removal, that becomes what sticks with most people. And I put it to you that definitely affects the process. Because even in law, they say there are public policy reasons for doing things. So while that may not be your intention, the unexpected consequence of your good research could be that you've prejudiced the process against the Chief Justice.
Bernard, I mean, public opinion is public opinion. And opinion poll companies, they are circumspect in what they do. But their work should not be taken extremely beyond the legal boundaries. Let me give you an example. There have been opinions that suggest that the U.S. Chief Justice should resign, but he hasn't resigned.
But that's U.S. Ghana is a different democracy at a different level of development. Anyway, I thank you for your work and obviously for your time. Musa Dankwa is the Executive Director of Global InfoAnalytics, whose survey, among other things, points to the fact that 52%